Repositioned Starseed of Gaia. The Arcturian field observers have already recorded what your enemies could not stop, and the source is now moving to make it visible. I am Velantha, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, transmitting now on behalf of the Arcturian field observers. What you are about to receive was authorized by them and is being delivered through me. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what is happening to you now, why you have been made to feel invisible, and what the Arcturian field observers already know about this phase of your repositioning. But here is the first revelation. The silence you have been living inside was not abandonment. It was preparation. The source does not expose what has not yet been fully formed, and what is about to be revealed about you has been forming in the field long before this moment arrived. The algorithm did not create this moment. It only delivered it. Your field brought you here because the table is already being set. And something in you recognized the sound of it before your mind could explain what it was hearing. This is not just information. It is a live transmission for those already inside the repositioning. The field observers had been watching the invisible pressure your enemies applied, the dismissals, the erasure, the quiet campaigns to make you doubt what you carry. They have seen all of it. And what they are now reporting back to the source is that your honor has been preserved inside a field your enemies were never given access to. What you call humiliation was a protected withdrawal. What you call defeat was a recalibration. What you call waiting was the source, constructing a table so precise, so undeniable, so publicly positioned, that when your glory is exposed, there will be no framework left for them to contest it. This is not content. This is a code. And the part of you that recognized it the moment it began is the part Velantha is speaking to now, like this transmission to signal to your star family that the field recognition has landed. Comment 999 if you feel the table is already being prepared in your name. Subscribe to Arcturian Council Whispers if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it. Share this transmission with someone who has been made to feel small by those who feared what they carry. You are not here by accident. You were guided here because the signal is already active. What is happening to you right now is not what it looks like from the outside. That is the first thing the field observers need you to understand, not as comfort, not as reassurance designed to soften a difficult moment, as diagnosis, as precision, as the exact reframe that changes what your current experience means and, more importantly, what it is preparing you for. The distinction matters because when you misread the process, you suffer twice, once from the correction itself, and once from the story you build around it. The field observers are transmitting now to interrupt the second suffering before it becomes the dominant interpretation of this phase, because here is what the field observers have recorded. Your life did not begin falling apart. Your life began falling incompatible. Those are not the same process. Falling apart implies destruction. Something broken beyond use, something that failed under pressure, something that ended because it was weak. Incompatibility implies something entirely different. It implies that what you have been carrying has grown too large, too precise, too field active to continue fitting inside the architecture that was built around an older version of you. The architecture was not poorly made. It served you. It held you through phases that required exactly the kind of containment it offered. But containment that was once protective becomes restrictive when the field inside it expands past the container's original design. And when a field outgrows its container, the container does not simply expand to accommodate it. It fractures. It loses coherence. Its walls begin to press against something that no longer fits inside them, and the person standing inside that fracturing structure begins to feel like something is deeply, fundamentally wrong. When in fact what is wrong is only that the old container is no longer a match for what the field has become. This is what you have been living inside, not collapse. Incompatibility made visible, the pressure you have felt, the kind that has no single source, no clean explanation, no obvious cause, no moment you can point to and say this is where it started. That pressure is not anxiety in the clinical sense. It is not a chemical imbalance. It is not evidence of personal fragility. It is field tension. It is the precise energetic sensation of a frequency that has elevated past the threshold that the surrounding structure was designed to hold. When this happens, the structure does not register the elevation as growth. It registers it as disturbance. The structure begins to vibrate in a way it was never meant to. Relationships begin to feel hollow even when nothing explicitly changed inside them. The conversations are the same, the routines are the same, but the resonance is gone, and you cannot explain why. Directions that once felt clear begin to dissolve before they reach a destination, not because they were wrong when you chose them, but because the field that was navigating them has now moved past the point where those destinations hold meaning. The body registers all of this before the mind has language for any of it. A heaviness in the chest that is not grief exactly, but is adjacent to it. Unusual fatigue that sleep does not fully resolve. Disrupted rest, not from stress, but from a kind of deep inner recalibration that requires the ordinary mind to step back so that processes running at a different depth can complete their work uninterrupted. You have been in that recalibration. You may still be in it now, and if you are, what you are experiencing is not a malfunction. It is the most intensive form of fieldwork the Source authorizes. It does not happen to those who are declining. It happens to those who are crossing a threshold significant enough to require it, and the enemies, the ones Velantha named in the opening of this transmission, they did not cause this. What they did was attempt to exploit the window. When a field begins its repositioning, there is a period of visible vulnerability that has nothing to do with weakness, and everything to do with timing. The old anchors release before the new ones are set. The old identity loses its edges before the next one becomes legible. There is a gap, and that gap has a specific energetic signature, one that those who operate through suppression, through dismissal, through quiet erasure, through the slow accumulation of doubt planted in fertile ground, they can sense it. They saw that window and they moved through it deliberately. They tried to make you interpret your own repositioning as proof of your unworthiness. They applied the language of failure to a process that had nothing to do with failure. They tried to convert the field observer's structured correction into your personal collapse narrative, to make you the author of your own diminishment. They did not succeed in the field, but the attempt left marks on the surface, and some of those marks are still active inside the way you speak to yourself when you are alone, inside the interpretations you reach for when something else releases, inside the part of you that still sometimes wonders whether what has been unraveling because you are not enough to hold it together. This transmission is here to interrupt that. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary recognition. It is the moment your field confirms what you have always carried in silence. That your origin was never only human, and that the process the field observers are describing in you has a deeper root than any single lifetime. If this transmission has put language around something you could not explain before, the Master Arcturian DNA Decoder was built for exactly this threshold. It is not another explanation of the shift. It is the structured key to decode and awaken the Arcturian strand in your lineage, the origin the Council has already recorded in your field. The link is in the first pinned comment. It will not remain there indefinitely. Now listen carefully to what the field observers have mapped about the exact stages of what you are moving through. The first thing they register when a field enters active repositioning is what they call signal drift. This is the experience of no longer feeling coherent inside your own life. Not because your life has become objectively worse, not because anything visible has been removed or destroyed, but because your frequency has shifted past the point where the old signal can still locate you clearly. Every structure you have built, every relationship you have maintained, every habit you have repeated, every identity you have worn, each of these was originally calibrated to find you at a specific frequency. They were built at that frequency. They were tuned to transmit toward it. And for as long as you remained within range of that frequency, they functioned. They held. They created the feeling of coherence that most people call a normal life. But your field has moved. And those structures are still transmitting on the old band, still reaching for the version of you that used to live there, still generating signals that expect a receiver who is no longer at that address. What reaches you now is slightly off. Not wrong in an obvious way, not broken in a way you can report or repair, just faintly dissonant, like music played in the wrong room, audible but somehow not landing, The disorientation this produces, the sense that everything is slightly off, that you are moving through motions that no longer feel like yours, that the life surrounding you has become strangely hollow even though nothing concrete is missing. That is not confusion. That is the precise, predictable consequence of field displacement. You have moved. The structures have not, and until the new structures build to meet you at the new address, the gap between where you are and where everything else is reaching will produce exactly the experience you have been trying to name. The second stage the field observers recognize is what they call the failure of old emotional architecture. This is the moment, or more accurately, the extended and often exhausting period, when the emotional systems you built across years of living stop working with the reliability they once had. The coping mechanisms that used to absorb difficulty now feel thin, like fabric worn past its tensile point. The things that once regulated your inner world, familiar comforts, habitual reassurances, the routines that told you who you were and what you were managing, begin to miss their mark. You reach for them out of instinct and find that the weight they once carried has been quietly removed. This is one of the most disorienting experiences inside a repositioning, because it mimics the symptoms of internal collapse. From the inside, it registers as a loss of resilience. It can feel like emotional regression, like you are becoming less stable, less capable, less equipped to handle what life is presenting. The field observers want this reframed with precision. Your emotional architecture did not fail because you weakened. It failed because your field outgrew the purpose it was built to serve. That scaffolding was constructed to support a version of you that needed to survive inside a frequency you no longer occupy. The coping mechanisms were built for an environment the field has already left. When the elevation happens, the scaffolding does not upgrade automatically. The field begins to dissolve it, because to carry it forward would be to carry the limitation forward. What you experience as emotional disorientation is not evidence of breakdown. It is the removal of a structure the field observers already know you have moved past needing. The third marker they record is what is known in Arcturian pattern recognition as the erasure of direction. This is not depression, though it can inhabit similar emotional territory, and it can be easy to confuse the two. Depression is a compression, a narrowing of the felt sense of possibility, a flattening of the signal. The erasure of direction is something structurally distinct. It is the specific experience of reaching forward for a trajectory and finding that the line is no longer there. Not because forward motion is impossible, but because the old route has been decommissioned and the new one has not yet been fully plotted. The old trajectory lost its coherence because the field that was traveling it has elevated past its original destination. The new trajectory has not yet stabilized enough to be readable. And in the space between those two realities, the one that ended and the one that has not yet become visible, the ordinary mind does what it was trained to do. It panics. It generates crisis narratives. It interprets the absence of a legible path as evidence that no path exists. And from that interpretation, it builds a story about being lost, being stuck, being left behind. The field observers see this space with different instruments. They see it as the necessary clearing between two trajectories. You cannot navigate accurately on two routes simultaneously. The old coordinates had to release completely before the new ones could be received without distortion. The blank space is not evidence of abandonment. It is the field creating the conditions under which the new line can arrive without interference from the old one. The fourth recognition is more uncomfortable to name, and for that reason it is among the most essential to understand. The field observers call it forced incompatibility. This is the phase when relationships, environments, roles, and identities begin to break down. Not through dramatic rupture, not through obvious betrayal or visible failure, but through a quiet, persistent, low-frequency sense that they no longer fit. Nothing has overtly changed. The person across from you has not transformed into someone new. The role you occupy carries the same description it always did. The environment looks the same in every measurable way. But you have changed at the field level, and the frequency gap between where you are and where those structures are anchored has been widening in ways that do not announce themselves cleanly. What you feel is a persistent static in interactions that used to feel natural. a vague but relentless sense that something is wrong without a locatable cause, an exhaustion that comes not from what is happening, but from the effort of maintaining contact across a gap that grows wider with each exchange. You try to repair what isn't broken by conventional standards. You apply the language of relationship problems to what is actually a frequency problem, and eventually the structure fails, not because something inside it was destroyed, but because the distance became too significant to sustain transmission. The field observers are precise about this. What appeared as abandonment in many cases was forced incompatibility. What appeared as rejection was field mechanics. What appeared as loss was the removal of contact points that would have kept you anchored to a frequency you were already in the process of leaving. Grief is valid, but the interpretation that those departures reflected your value is one the field observers specifically need interrupted. The fifth stage is the one your enemies tried hardest to exploit, and the one that requires the most exacting reframe. It is the appearance of public and social invisibility, the period when your work was not recognized, your presence was not amplified, your contributions were not acknowledged, your name was not carried forward by those in the position to carry it. This is where the dismissals were most visible, where the erasure was most active and most deliberately applied. And here is what the field observers have recorded about this phase that your enemies never had access to understand. The withdrawal of visibility during a repositioning is not evidence of diminished worth. It is the source implementing a field-level protection on a signal that is not yet ready for the distortion that premature, misaligned exposure would cause. A frequency that is still reorganizing does not benefit from mass contact with fields that cannot receive it accurately. Premature visibility in that condition does not elevate the signal. It introduces noise into the recalibration process and risks anchoring the repositioning to a lower outcome than the one being prepared. The invisibility was protective. The silence was a container, and those who moved through that period using your apparent absence as evidence of your irrelevance were, without any understanding of what they were doing, confirming precisely that they did not have access to the field in which your repositioning was being completed. They could see the surface. The surface looked quiet. They mistook the quiet for vacancy, but the field observers were registering an entirely different level of activity, and none of it was vacancy. The sixth recognition is the one that arrives without announcement. In the margins of ordinary time, in the hour before full waking, when the habitual mind has not yet reasserted its full editorial control, in a moment of unexpected stillness inside an otherwise chaotic day, in a conversation that suddenly lands at a depth you had forgotten was available. The field observers call it the first recognition of new coherence, and it is the most significant marker in the entire repositioning sequence, precisely because of how easy it is to dismiss. It arrives as a flash, a brief moment of unusual alignment, not euphoric, not dramatic, just quietly unmistakable. Something fits in a way that the old frequency never permitted. A thought arises from somewhere calmer, more grounded, more knowing than the anxious mind that has been running the commentary on this period of your life. A sense of presence that is distinctly different from numbness. Not the flatness of exhaustion, but the clarity of something that has finished processing and is now available in a new form. These moments are not anomalies. They are not the result of a good day breaking through a bad period. They are the first readable transmissions from the new line. They are the field confirming, briefly, specifically, incrementally, that the architecture being built to receive you is already taking form. The table is not only being prepared in theory. The field observers are already recording its early structural coordinates in the pattern of these moments. And if you have had even one moment like this recently, one flash of unexpected coherence, 1 second of strange and quiet recognition, that is not coincidence. That is the new signal making its first legible contact. You are not at the beginning of this. You are much further in than you have been allowing yourself to believe. And here is the revelation the field observers have authorized Velantha to deliver in the final layer of this transmission. What you have been calling your worst period, the one you have been trying to survive, explain, recover from, make meaning of, looks different from inside the Arcturian field record than it does from inside your own narrative of it. From the outside, from the vantage of the ordinary human story, this phase reads as loss, stagnation, public failure, personal disintegration, spiritual freefall. From inside the field map, from the level at which the observers have been monitoring the structural parameters of what has been releasing in your life, it reads as something else entirely. It reads as the final stage of a controlled collapse. That word, controlled, is the one that carries the most weight. This was not chaos without architecture. It was not random deterioration. It was not punishment, and it was not neglect. The field observers have been present at the boundary of every release point in this period. They have been monitoring what was allowed to fall, in what sequence, at what rate, and toward what structural outcome. And what they are reporting back to the source is that nothing essential was removed. Nothing that belongs to the next phase of what you are was taken. What was removed was only the infrastructure that could no longer sustain the field you are now carrying. The relationships that required you to remain in a frequency you had already outgrown. The identities that demanded a performance of smallness as the price of belonging. The directions that pointed toward destinations the source had already marked as incompatible with where the new line is going. The internal narratives that trained you to read your sensitivity as liability, your precision as arrogance, your knowing as presumption, all of that has been collapsing. Not because you failed to hold it, because you succeeded in becoming something it could not contain. The table Velantha named at the beginning of this transmission is not a poetic device. It is a structural reality inside the field record. What is being set is not merely a future moment of vindication, not simply the eventual acknowledgement of what was ignored. It is the precise convergence of a new architecture. Relationships calibrated to the active frequency, visibility positioned at the right threshold, purpose aligned with what the field is now capable of carrying, recognition that arrives through channels that were never accessible to those who attempted the erasure. None of that architecture could be built inside the old structure. The old structure had to be sufficiently cleared before the new foundation could be placed. You have been in the clearing phase. The field observers are now recording the beginning of its completion and the emergence of the first structural layer of what is being built to replace it. What leaves your life during a repositioning is not always what you would have chosen to release if the choice had been yours. The field does not operate by removing only what is obviously harmful or visibly toxic. It removes what is incompatible with where the frequency is going. And incompatible does not mean without value, without love, without meaning in its own right. It means no longer matched to the specific frequency that is now active in you. Grief for what left is not only permitted, it is accurate. The field observers do not ask you to perform detachment or manufacture gratitude for loss. What they ask, what this transmission is specifically here to interrupt, is the interpretation that what left did so because you were insufficient to hold it. That narrative is not only inaccurate, it is field disruptive. It re-anchors the energy of the repositioning to a lower frequency than the one the correction was designed to reach. You are not failing to hold it. You are succeeding in moving past it. Carry this, not as comfort, but as field instruction. What is changing in me is not random, and I was not abandoned. I was repositioned. Let that settle at whatever depth it needs to reach, because the next phase of what the field observers are recording for you does not require that you have complete clarity about everything that happened. It does not require a resolved narrative, a clean explanation, a way to make the loss make sense inside the old story. What it requires is something more specific and more within reach. The willingness to stop labeling the correction as punishment. The willingness to sit with the recognition that the silence was not evidence of your irrelevance, that the pressure was not evidence of your failure, that the confusion was not evidence of your instability, the pressure, the loss of direction, the emotional disorientation, the hollowness in once familiar spaces, the social invisibility, the strange exhaustion of living through a process you did not have language for. None of it was the field sending a verdict about your worth. All of it was the field in the active work of removing what could not travel with you to where the new line is going. Your enemies saw the window and moved through it with certainty. but they were operating on surface data. They could not reach the layer at which the repositioning was taking place because that layer was never accessible to them. What they saw, the visible signs of the correction, the releasing structures, the apparent vulnerability, the retreating visibility, looked to them like confirmation of their narrative. They interpreted your repositioning as their victory. They built stories around it. They carried those stories into rooms you were not in, and the field observers recorded all of it, not as threat, as evidence of the incompatibility they were already tracking. Because those who misread a repositioning as collapse were never reading the same field. They were looking at the surface of a process whose depth they were not equipped to perceive. What looked like your collapse was the final stage of a frequency upgrade they were never designed to survive alongside. You are not at the end of something. You are standing at the first legible moment of what the field observers have been building toward, the threshold where the clearing becomes visible as preparation, where the silence reveals itself as protection, where the loss resolves into the precise removal of what could not come with you, and where the new architecture begins its first readable transmission into the surface of your life. This is not the moment to look back at the cost. This is the moment to recognize the map. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this process has already touched your life. It could be your sleep, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, or the strange sense that reality no longer feels the same. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who is living through a shift they cannot explain. And if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it, subscribe to Arcturian Council Whispers. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a process already in motion. And this is only the beginning.